Hello, welcome to OJ Studios. Please enjoy part 1 of Flower Girl for Hire by Olivia Julius.
Chapter 1, The Drive. The rain tapped soft and steady against the car window, streaking the glass like someone was painting with gray watercolors. I rested my head against the door and stared out at the trees blurring by. Everything outside looked washed out and sleepy, like the whole world was sighing. Aunt Meredith hummed along to the radio, some old folk song with a banjo in it. I didn't recognize it. I didn't really care. I just wanted to disappear. Yesterday felt like 100 years ago. But I could still see it in my head. My parents yelling across the kitchen, my dad's voice sharp, my mom's voice shaking, both of them trying not to look at me even though I was right there. They didn't even say goodbye properly. Just a quick hug from Mom, a pat on the shoulder from Dad, and then they shoved my suitcase into Aunt Meredith's trunk like I was one more thing they couldn't deal with. "We just need a little time to figure things out," Dad had said. "It'll be good for you, honey," Mom added, like going to live with someone I barely knew was some kind of vacation. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice not to crack. Now here I was. Somewhere outside the city. Somewhere greener and emptier and colder. My phone had no signal and my stomach felt weird, like it hadn't decided if it was hungry or just nervous. "You doing okay back there?" Aunt Meredith asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. I shrugged. "Yeah. Almost there. I've got your room all ready. And there's pie. Blueberry. Your mom said it was your favorite." I didn't correct her. My favorite was actually cherry, but blueberry was okay. Besides, it's not like it mattered. I hadn't spent much time with Aunt Meredith before. She always sent funny birthday cards with glitter and bad puns, and I remembered her dancing with a bunch of strangers at a family reunion once, spinning like she didn't care who was watching. But beyond that? Nothing. I knew she owned a farm. I didn't know she turned it into a wedding venue. I guess people like that kind of thing, barns and hay bales and fields of flowers. Or maybe that was just what adults like to take pictures of so they could pretend everything was perfect. I leaned my head back against the seat and watched as the road curved around a hill. The sky was still gray, but the clouds were starting to break in places. I could see hints of gold light behind them, trying to push through. The car rattled as we turned onto a gravel driveway. Up ahead, I saw a white barn with fairy lights strung across the roof, even though it was still the middle of the day. There was a big wooden sign that said Whispering Pines Weddings. Underneath, in smaller letters, it read, "Love grows here." It looked like a postcard. I suddenly felt out of place. Like I didn't belong in a place where people came to be happy. "We're here," Aunt Meredith said, her voice warm. I just nodded. My fingers tightened on the straps of my backpack as she parked the car and turned off the engine. The rain had stopped. But the silence left behind felt louder than the thunder. The gravel crunched under the tires as we pulled up in front of a white house that looked half normal, half weird. The top floor looked like any other house, shutters, porch swing, little wind chimes clinking in the breeze. But the bottom floor? It looked like a shop window straight out of a magazine. Through the big glass panes, I saw mannequins, the adult kind wearing tuxedos and huge, lacy wedding dresses that practically swallowed them. Some of them even had veils pinned to their blank plastic heads. One of the mannequins wore a bright blue suit with fake flowers in the breast pocket, like he was going to a prom from the 1980s. Right in the center of the display were smaller mannequins, kid-sized. One wore a tiny tux with shiny black shoes and a crooked little bow tie. Next to it was a flower girl dress, all puffed sleeves and ruffled layers, like a cupcake exploded and turned into clothing. I stared at them for a second longer than I meant to. Aunt Meredith followed my gaze and grinned. Those creeped me out at first, too. Especially when I came downstairs in the dark and forgot they were there. Nearly screamed my head off once. I gave a polite, fake laugh. The kind you do when someone expects a response but you don't really have one. She got out of the car and slammed her door shut. I waited a beat before climbing out myself. The air smelled like wet grass and wood smoke, and something sweet I couldn't place, maybe lavender? Or some kind of wedding flower. "This way," Aunt Meredith said, grabbing my suitcase from the trunk. "We'll go in through the side door. The main entrance is for brides, grooms, and panicked mothers." I followed her across the gravel, stepping around a puddle. The whole place looked like a Pinterest board. String lights wrapped around porch beams. A chalkboard sign that said "Welcome, Lovebirds," leaned against a white rocking chair. And off in the distance, I could see a gazebo surrounded by flower beds, even in the light drizzle. I bet people got married there and took photos like they were in a movie. I bet they didn't send their kids away like they were someone else's problem. The side door opened into a hallway that smelled like vanilla and pine. There were shelves stacked with candles, ribbons, baskets, and fake rose petals. It was like stepping into a wedding exploded and left behind confetti and tulle. "Don't worry," Aunt Meredith said, leading me through, "you're not expected to care about all this. It's just my life's work, no big deal." I cracked a real smile at that one. Just a small one. She had a way of saying things that made it hard to roll your eyes at her, even when you wanted to. We climbed a narrow set of stairs that creaked under our feet and reached the upper floor. The vibe up here was more normal house, hardwood floors, mismatched furniture, books stacked sideways on shelves, a fat orange cat sprawled across the back of the couch like it paid rent. "This is home," Aunt Meredith said. "Living room's over there. Kitchen's through that doorway. And your room's at the end of the hall. Clean sheets, a dresser to put your stuff in, and yes, there's Wi-Fi." "Thanks," I muttered. "You hungry?" I shook my head. "Not really." She nodded like she understood, even if she didn't. "Alright. I'll be downstairs getting things ready for this weekend's wedding. If you need anything, just holler. Or don't. I'm good at giving space too." She headed back toward the stairs, her boots making soft thuds as she went. I stood in the hallway for a minute, backpack still slung over one shoulder, suitcase handle in my hand. The house was quiet now. Not the awkward kind of quiet, more like the calm kind, the kind that wraps around you if you let it. I turned toward my room. No cousins. No kids. No one to play with or talk to except mannequins and wedding dresses. Sounded like a blast. The hallway creaked under my socks as I walked to the last door, the one Aunt Meredith had pointed out. It was already slightly open, like it had been waiting for me. I pushed it the rest of the way and stepped inside. It didn't exactly scream guest bedroom. More like office that got cleaned in a hurry. There was a small twin bed tucked against the far wall, a set of folded towels at the foot of it like someone had watched one of those hotel tutorials online. The comforter didn't match the pillowcases, and I could still see faint rings on the desk from where coffee mugs had once lived. A corkboard hung over the desk, full of pinned notes, receipts, faded business cards, and to-do lists scribbled in purple ink. One yellow sticky note near the corner just said, "Don't forget to breathe. Also, order more folding chairs." There was a little dresser with mismatched knobs, and a tiny lamp that looked like it came from a thrift store. A folding screen stood in the corner with a floral pattern printed across it, like a half-hearted attempt at giving the room charm. I dragged my suitcase over and set it on the bed with a dull thump. The mattress bounced a little from the weight. And then I just stood there. The walls were too quiet, the kind of quiet that made you notice your own breathing. I looked out the small window. From here I could see the edge of the barn, and beyond that, rows of white folding chairs stacked near the gazebo. I guessed another wedding was coming up. Probably why I got shoved out here early, one less thing for my parents to argue about. One less moving piece. I sat on the bed inside, deep and long. I knew this wasn't permanent. Just a few weeks. Just until they figure things out. But I didn't want to be here. And I didn't want to be there, either. I didn't know where I wanted to be. I kicked off my shoes and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. There were faint glow-in-the-dark stars stuck up there, probably from some kid who stayed here once. Or maybe Meredith just liked them. My fingers curled around the edge of my suitcase. I didn't cry. I told myself I wouldn't. And for now, at least, I didn't. Chapter 2: The Girl in the Yellow Dress. thunk. Then another. I sat up fast. Car doors. I rubbed my eyes and slid off the bed, shuffling to the window. The rain had mostly cleared now, leaving the gravel lot below slick and shiny like glass. A silver SUV had just pulled in, and 3 doors were already swinging shut. A little girl about my age leapt out first, practically bouncing. She wore sparkly pink sneakers and a hoodie with cartoon kittens on it. Her dark brown hair was pulled into 2 high ponytails, and she had the kind of energy that made you instantly tired just watching her. She tugged at the hand of a woman I guess was her mom, who was carrying a garment bag and talking to someone over her shoulder. The dad followed behind them, holding what looked like a purse and a juice box like he'd been through this routine before. The girls skipped up the wooden steps and disappeared inside through the main entrance, the bride's and panicked mother's door. I tilted my head. I wasn't really curious, exactly. Just bored. And maybe a little nosy. I crept out of the room, making sure the door didn't creak. The upstairs hallway was still empty. I padded down the stairs slowly, carefully, skipping the step I knew from earlier, let out a loud snap. Voices drifted up from the store area, light, chatty voices, mixed with laughter and the rustle of plastic hangers. I crouched just above the last step and peeked around the corner. The downstairs had been transformed since I got here, lights on, racks pulled out, fabric and lace spilling from dress forms. It smelled like fresh lavender and a hint of perfume. The girl and her parents stood near a changing room area. Her mom was handing something to Aunt Meredith, a clipboard, maybe, while the dad gave an exhausted smile like he was trying to stay awake through a 3rd shopping trip in one day. A moment later, the little girl pushed through the curtain and stepped out. She was wearing a pale yellow flower girl dress that puffed out around her knees like a bell. Ribbons crisscrossed the back, and there were tiny embroidered flowers along the hem. She did a quick twirl, giggling, arms out like airplane wings. "Wow!" Aunt Meredith said. "The Mackenzies are going to love you in that dress." The girl beamed like she'd just won an award. The mom put a hand to her chest. "It's perfect! That's exactly the color they wanted too." "Fits her like a dream," Meredith added. "I'll make a note for the alterations, but I doubt we'll need more than a hem." They all moved closer to the mirror, fussing with the skirt and shoes, adjusting ribbons, smoothing wrinkles. I leaned my back against the wall and sat on the step, out of view. The girl twirled again, this time slower, watching herself in the mirror. She looked like she belonged there, not just in the dress, but in the moment. Like this had always been part of her plan. I didn't know her name, and I didn't really care. But part of me felt a weird twist in my chest, like I was watching something from far away. Something I wasn't supposed to see. Or maybe something I didn't know I wanted to. I shifted to get a better look, and my heel hit the edge of the step with a loud, wooden clunk. Everything below went silent. Then, "Dylan?" My aunt's voice floated up, amused more than annoyed. "You might as well come down. We know you're up there." I winced. So much for being sneaky. I stood up and tried to act like I'd just been walking down normally the whole time. Not sure I fooled anyone. When I rounded the corner into the shop, everyone turned to look at me. Shelby was still in the yellow dress, her ponytail swaying as she leaned one way, then the other, admiring herself in the mirror. Her parents smiled politely, and my aunt gave me a look that said busted, but not in trouble. "Everyone, this is my nephew, Dylan," she said. "He's staying with me for a few weeks." "Hi," I mumbled, shoving my hands in my pockets. "This is Shelby Greening," Aunt Meredith continued, gesturing to the girl in the dress, and her parents, Leah and Tom. "Shelby is going to be our flower girl for the Mackenzie wedding this weekend." Shelby turned away from the mirror and gave me a little wave, still glowing with dress-up energy. "Hi!" I nodded. "Hey!" She smiled like we were already friends. "You live here?" I shook my head. "Just visiting." "Shelby and her family are helping out this weekend," Meredith explained, stepping over to a rolling rack of dresses. "Occasionally, when someone rents the venue, they need a few extra people to fill in, bridesmaids, best men, even ring bearers and flower girls. You'd be surprised how often folks realize last minute they forgot to include someone. I looked at Shelby again. So you just do that? Fill in? Shelby grinned. Oh yeah. I've been in more weddings than I can count. Flower girl, junior bridesmaid, once even carried the rings cause the ring bearer got strep throat. She's a total pro, Meredith added. The McKinseys are lucky to have her. Shelby did another twirl, this time with her arms folded like a ballerina. This one's easy. They just want me to toss petals, smile, and wear this dress. Which is so comfy, by the way. Her mom laughed. Don't jinx it, Shell. I glanced at the mirror again, at the way the dress swayed with her, catching the soft shop lighting. It looked like something out of a fairy tale book. Not the kind I usually read, but the kind that sit on display at the library with ribbons and gold trim on the cover. Shelby didn't look nervous or embarrassed. She looked like she owned the role. I wasn't sure why that made my stomach twist again. Maybe I was just tired. Or maybe I wasn't. Shelby skipped off toward the dressing room, the layers of her yellow dress swishing as she disappeared behind the floral patterned curtain. Her mom followed with the garment bag slung over one arm, chatting softly with her husband as they stepped away to wait. Aunt Meredith turned to me and crossed her arms. This weekend's gonna be a busy one, she said in that voice grown-ups use when they're about to ask for a favor but want it to sound like an opportunity. I raised an eyebrow. Yeah? 2 weddings booked back to back. Shelby's gig is Saturday afternoon, McKinsey family. Real sweet couple, big floral budget, Pinterest boards for days. Then another ceremony Sunday morning, small, more rustic, but still the full treatment. 2 weddings in 2 days? She nodded. Which means a lot of setup, teardown, cleaning, sweeping, hauling chairs, folding linens, the glamorous life. I waited for the catch. And I'm gonna need help, she added with a knowing smile. Which is where you come in. I made a face. I'm not exactly a party person. You don't have to be. You just have to be a responsible, semi-competent human being who can carry folding chairs without dropping them. Sounds thrilling. Oh, and you'll get paid, of course, she said, like that sealed the deal. $15 an hour. Cash. I blinked. Wait, seriously? Seriously. I pay my helpers. Weddings are work, Dylan. It's not all cake and music and weepy relatives. I paused, then shrugged. Alright. I guess. Good. She gave me a satisfied nod. We'll start tomorrow morning with sweeping the barn and double-checking the decor. It'll be nice for you to get your hands dirty. Character building. I muttered something about already having enough character, but she didn't hear me, or pretended not to. Behind the curtain, I heard Shelby chatting with her mom, her voice light and full of little giggles. Like she actually enjoyed all of this. The dress, the fittings, the twirling. Being part of someone's big, fancy day. I wasn't sure what my role was supposed to be in any of it. But at least I had something to do now. And I was getting paid. That part didn't suck. The curtain switched aside and Shelby came bouncing out, back in her regular clothes, a pink tank top with a glittery butterfly on the front and a denim skirt with little embroidered hearts along the hem. She wore it like it was the most natural thing in the world, like she didn't even notice how dressed up it looked compared to my hoodie and sneakers. She spotted me leaning against one of the wooden display tables and walked over like we were mid-conversation, even though we hadn't said more than hi. You're really quiet, she said, hands on her hips. Are you shy or just pretending to be cool? I blinked. I guess shy. She squinted at me like she wasn't sure she believed it. So are you staying here for a wedding or something? No. I shook my head, then paused. I mean, kinda. Just staying with my aunt. Because you're helping out? I hesitated. My eyes drifted to Aunt Meredith, who was now chatting with Shelby's parents about pickup times and rehearsal schedules. Shelby tilted her head, waiting. My parents are figuring stuff out, I said, finally. I tried to keep my voice even, like it didn't matter. They said it'd be better if I stayed here for a little while. Oh! Her tone changed, softer. Like, figuring out a divorce? I looked at her, surprised. Yeah. How'd you guess? She shrugged, suddenly interested in the floor. My friend Jada's parents did that. She stayed with her grandma for like, a whole month while they argued about who got the couch. I gave a weak smile. Yeah, sounds about right. Do you miss them? She asked, looking back up at me. Or are you glad to get a break? I wanted to say both, but the words stuck in my throat. So I just shrugged again. Shelby didn't push it, which I was weirdly thankful for. She just nodded and started fiddling with a strand of her hair. You're lucky your aunt owns a wedding place, she said after a pause. This is, like, the coolest place ever. Way better than my dentist's office. One time I had to stay there for 2 hours because my mom forgot to pick me up. That sounds like a nightmare. Right? And they didn't even let me play with the fake teeth. I couldn't help it, I laughed. Just a little. She grinned like she'd been aiming for that all along. Maybe you'll get to help with my wedding on Saturday, she said, spinning once on her heel. It's not your wedding, I pointed out. She smirked. Please. I'm the flower girl. Everyone knows I'm the star of the show. I opened my mouth to respond, but Aunt Meredith clapped her hands and said, Alright, greetings. We are all set. Shelby skipped off toward her parents, and I stayed behind, watching the way her ponytail swayed and how she never once seemed uncertain about her place in the room. I wasn't sure how she did that. But maybe I'd figure it out. Eventually. I watched through the front window as Shelby climbed into the back seat of the SUV, her mom waving one last time to Aunt Meredith. Her dad gave a thumbs up before sliding into the passenger seat, and a moment later, the car backed out of the gravel lot and disappeared down the long driveway. The shop suddenly felt quieter. Calmer. But not exactly peaceful. She's something, huh? Aunt Meredith said beside me, stretching her arms behind her back. Like a glitter tornado with legs. I huffed out a half laugh. Yeah. She never stops talking. She's a sweetheart though. Reliable too. That kid has saved more weddings than I can count. I didn't really know what to say to that, so I just nodded. Aunt Meredith clapped her hands once. Alright. Come on! You've seen the mannequins in the dressing rooms. Time to see the fun stuff. I raised an eyebrow. There's fun stuff? She grinned. Depends on your definition of fun. We stepped out the side door into the soft afternoon air. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the ground damp and the sky washed clean. The air smelled like pine and something sweet, maybe leftover cake from another wedding, or one of the many candles she had burning inside. We walked past the barn, which looked even bigger up close. White painted wood, high double doors, and string lights zigzagging under the roof overhang like glowing spiderwebs. I could see rows of folding chairs stacked along one side and a few crates of decorations waiting to be unpacked. This is the main event space, she said, gesturing grandly. Dances, ceremonies, receptions, it all happens in here. It doesn't look like much now, but once we get the lights on and the centerpiece is set up, it turns into something really special. I stepped inside with her. The floor creaked a little under my sneakers, but it smelled clean and dry, a mix of sawdust and old flowers. You could tell a lot of memories had been made here. Tomorrow, she continued, is your fun day. No chores, no stress. You can sleep in, explore the grounds, whatever you want. Just don't go poking around the tool shed without asking. I once found a raccoon in there and we're not repeating that disaster. I blinked. Okay. Friday is when the real work starts. We clean the barn top to bottom, prep decorations, set up tables, the whole deal. Saturday is the Mackenzie wedding. Shelby's showtime. Sunday, we do it all over again for the Holloway wedding, then Monday I sleep for 12 hours and live off leftover cupcakes. I smiled, just barely. Got it? Don't worry, she added, nudging my arm gently. I'll go easy on you." We stepped back outside, and I glanced around the rest of the property. Beyond the barn, I saw the gazebo again, and a small field of wildflowers off to the side. There were benches tucked under trees, a wooden swing hanging from a thick oak, and fairy lights strung up along the fencing. It was quiet, but not in a bad way. Just quiet enough to think. Maybe that's what I needed. Even if I didn't know it yet. As we walked back toward the house, something out past the tree line caught my eye, a shimmer of light reflecting off water. "Hey," I said, slowing down. "Is that a pond?" Aunt Meredith followed my gaze and smiled. "Yup! Spring-fed, clean, and deep enough for swimming if you're careful. There's a dock and everything. Brides love it for photos, but I grew up jumping off that thing every summer." There was a quiet pull in my chest. Not excitement exactly, but something close. "I brought my swim trunks," I said. "In my suitcase. Would it be okay if I?" She waved her hand. "Knock yourself out. Just be smart, and no diving, the left side's shallow near the reeds. There's a towel bin in the mudroom." I nodded, already imagining the cool water on my skin. "Thanks." She smiled and turned toward the house. "Dinner's at 6. If you're not back by then, I'm sending the cat after you." It didn't take long to change. I grabbed my trunks from my suitcase, pulled on a t-shirt over them, and made my way down the back path toward the pond. It was even better up close. The dock stretched about 10 feet into the water, gray and a little weathered, but still solid. Dragonflies zipped over the surface, and frogs chirped somewhere near the edge. The pond was surrounded by tall grass and trees that leaned just enough to cast a dappled shade across the shore. I toed off my shoes, dropped my towel onto the dock, and sat at the edge, letting my legs dangle over the side. The water was cool, but not freezing. Just right. After a minute, I slid in. It stole my breath at first, not because it was too cold, but because it was real. Not a dream, not a distraction. Just water. Quiet, still, and mine. I floated on my back, staring up at the patchy clouds drifting across the sky. The weight in my chest loosened a little, like the pressure had been turned down just enough to think. Maybe this summer wouldn't be as awful as I thought. Maybe it would just be something different. I didn't know what that meant yet. But for now, I let myself float. Chapter 3: The Fun Day. Sunlight crept in slow through the window, sliding across the wooden floor and reaching the edge of my borrowed bed like it was checking to see if I was awake. I squinted against it, rolled onto my side, and blinked at the unfamiliar ceiling. It took me a second to remember where I was. Not my bedroom. Not my house. Not my parents fighting in the kitchen. Aunt Meredith's guest room. Whispering Pines weddings. The middle of nowhere, or at least it felt that way. I sat up and rubbed the sleep from my eyes. The sheets were still a little stiff from being freshly washed, and the comforter had bunched up at my feet. The glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling were still there, though they looked silly in the daylight, like forgotten stickers from someone else's dream. My phone said 7:13 a.m. too early for a day off, probably, but I was already awake. No point in forcing more sleep. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, stretched until my shoulders popped, and stood up. Outside, the birds were going full concert mode, chirping like their lives depended on it. Through the window, I could see the mist lifting from the trees and a golden haze settling over the fields. It actually looked nice. Calm. Maybe today wouldn't be so bad. The house was quiet when I padded into the hallway. The wood floors creaked under my steps, and the cat, the big orange one, lifted his head from the arm of the couch, gave me a slow blink, and went back to sleep. There was a note on the kitchen counter in Aunt Meredith's handwriting. Out early for supply run, back by 10. Granola bars in the drawer. Eat something. PS still counts as a fun day if you get dressed first. Smile. I smiled a little and grabbed a granola bar. Peanut butter. Good enough. I took it out onto the porch and sat on the top step, still barefoot, watching as the early light crawled across the barn roof. Dew glistened on the grass, and a pair of rabbits hopped along the fence line like they had an appointment to keep. It didn't feel like a wedding factory. Not this early. Not with the air this cool and the world this still. Just a farm. Just quiet. And today, mine. I finished my granola bar and headed back upstairs, already picturing the pond, the dock warm from the sun, the water cool and smooth around my arms. I dug through my suitcase for my swim trunks, tossed on a t-shirt over them, and grabbed the same towel I'd used yesterday. This time, I'd go earlier. Maybe stay longer. I was halfway through tying the drawstring on my trunks when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I froze, towel in hand, and crossed to the window. Aunt Meredith's SUV rolled into the parking lot, her window down and music playing faintly from the speakers. She parked in her usual spot and got out with a paper bag and a to-go coffee in hand. But before I could head downstairs to say hi, or ask if I could take off to the pond, another car turned in behind hers. Not one I recognized. It was smaller, shinier, and looked like it had been freshly cleaned just for the occasion. Two people got out, a couple. A man and a woman, both probably in their late 20s or early 30s. The woman wore a loose floral dress and sunglasses, and the man had on a button-down shirt and brown leather shoes, like he wasn't sure how casual he was supposed to be. They looked around for a second before walking up toward the main entrance. I stayed near the window, watching. Aunt Meredith turned, noticed them, and waved with her coffee cup. She said something I couldn't hear, and they smiled and came closer. She unlocked the front door to the shop and ushered them inside like they were old friends. I didn't move. Something about the way they carried themselves, calm, formal, serious but trying to be chill, made it feel different than a normal drop-in. Businesslike. Important. I had no clue who they were. Not yet. But something told me this wasn't just a visit. I backed away from the window, towel still slung over my shoulder. Swimming could wait. I crept down the stairs as quietly as I could, hugging the wall and skipping the creaky step near the middle. The shop was mostly quiet, except for the low hum of conversation drifting in from the front room. I crouched just above the last step, just out of view, and leaned in. "I'm really sorry," the woman was saying. Her voice was soft, but firm, the kind of voice people used when they were trying to stay calm even though they were panicking underneath. "But our niece can't make it. Her family had a medical emergency and had to fly out yesterday. We just found out this morning." "That's awful," Aunt Meredith said. "I hope everything's okay." "They'll be fine," the man added. "It's just bad timing." "We tried calling around for another little girl," the woman continued, "but everyone's either booked or too young. And the wedding's Sunday." There was a pause, followed by the sound of something being unzipped, probably a garment bag, and the rustle of fabric. "We just need to find a girl who can wear this," the woman said. I peeked around the corner, just enough to see. She was holding up a small dress, pink, with delicate lace along the skirt and puffed sleeves that looked like they belonged in a vintage storybook. The chest shimmered slightly, beaded embroidery catching the light in tiny sparkles. My aunt stepped closer to get a better look. "It's beautiful," she said. "Handmade?" The woman nodded. "By my mother. For my sister's wedding. Her daughter wore it as the flower girl. Then my cousin's daughter. Then my niece was supposed to wear it for me. It's kind of a tradition." The man added, "Every sibling in the family has had their flower girl wear it. We don't want to break the line." I could hear the weight in those words. It wasn't just about a dress. It was about family. History. Holding something together. "Let me think for a second," Aunt Meredith said, stepping away. I could hear her flipping through the contacts on her phone. "I might know someone who can help." I pulled back a little farther into the shadows as she dialed. "Hey, Leah?" she said when someone picked up. "You guys still in town? I might have a little favor to ask." She paused. Mom. Yeah. Is Shelby busy this morning? I need her to come by real quick." "Yeah, just have her try something on." I think she might be a perfect fit for a special request. Another pause. Great! See you in a bit! She hung up and turned back to the couple. Shelby grinning. She's been a flower girl more times than I can count. Sweet kid! Good with people! If she fits, you might just be in luck. The woman exhaled, clearly relieved. Thank you! Really? I crouched lower on the steps, heart beating faster than it should have. I wasn't sure why. Maybe it was how calm Aunt Meredith sounded. Like this was just another puzzle to solve, another pretty photo to complete. Maybe it was that dress. All that pink, all that lace, all that tradition. And how easily someone else could step into it. From behind the corner, I stayed completely still, trying to process what I'd just seen. Shelby, the same girl who'd danced in a yellow dress like she owned the world, had just walked out looking unsure, even disappointed. That dress wasn't meant for her. But it was more than that. It wasn't just about looking right. It was about fitting into something old, something important. Like a story that had to be told the same way every time. Voices picked up again from the storefront. I leaned a little closer to hear. What about Lily? Shelby's voice floated out. She's been a flower girl before. Aunt Meredith responded gently. Too small. She's only 6, the dress would swallow her whole. What about Miranda? Too tall, Meredith said with a sigh. And broader through the shoulders. I think that bodice would tear right down the side. There was a pause. Someone exhaled. I can pull another pink dress from the stock room, Aunt Meredith offered. It's not the same, but it's soft rose, close in tone. I'll take half off the rental fee for the inconvenience. I don't know who else is going to match the fit of that one in 2 days. The bride sounded polite, but firm. It really needs to be that dress. If it isn't, I'd rather not have a flower girl at all. It's not about matching the color scheme, it's about the tradition. And that's when Shelby said it. Well, too bad Dylan isn't a girl, she said lightly. He looks about the right size. My stomach dropped. My breath caught. I moved without meaning to, just a shift of my foot, a quick inhale, but it was enough. Crack! My heel smacked the bottom step. Loud. Sharp. Obvious. Silence. Then, what was that? Shelby asked. I froze. No ghosts in this venue, I promise, Aunt Meredith said, but I heard her footsteps coming toward the hallway. Panic raced up my spine. Too late to run. Too late to pretend I hadn't been listening. And the worst part? I wasn't even sure why that comment hit so hard. Just that it had. And that now. They all knew I was there. Dylan, Aunt Meredith called out, her voice firm and a little sharp. Come on down. If you're going to eavesdrop, you might as well join the conversation. I winced and stepped into view, trying not to look directly at anyone as I slowly walked into the shop. Shelby looked surprised, her eyebrows raised. Her mom gave me a small, understanding smile. The bride and groom? Harder to read. The woman looked curious. The guy didn't look thrilled. I wasn't, I just heard voices, I started, then gave up. Sorry. You're not in trouble, Aunt Meredith said, hands on her hips. But if you're gonna lurk around like a ghost, you're going to get swept up in the haunting. She turned back to the dress, the pink one with the lace and the beaded embroidery, and pulled it from the display hook. Without a word, she held it out in front of me, lining it up to my shoulders. She looked between the dress and me, then gave a small nod. What are you doing? I asked, voice quiet. Just checking something, she said. Then the groom, the man with the fancy shoes and the business casual attitude, scoffed. This is ridiculous, he muttered, looking at Aunt Meredith. He's a boy. Has he even worn a dress before? I felt my ears burn. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Aunt Meredith didn't miss a beat. She unzipped the back of the dress and gently held it out toward me. Dylan, she said calmly, go try it on. Dressing rooms open. I stared at the dress in her hands. My heart thudded in my chest. I wasn't sure if it was from embarrassment, or something else entirely. The dress swayed slightly in the air between us, soft pink, delicate lace, the beads catching the shop light like tiny stars. The puffed sleeves looked like they belonged to someone else's life. Someone softer. Smaller. Different. I didn't move. Everyone was looking at me now. Shelby, curious but quiet. Her mom, wide-eyed. The bride, hopeful. The groom, clearly waiting for someone to say this was all just a joke. But Aunt Meredith's eyes were steady. Not pushing. Just waiting. And I didn't know what to say. Because part of me wanted to bolt. And part of me wondered what it would feel like to wear it. Not pretend. Not for a joke. Just to know. Dylan, Aunt Meredith called out, her voice firm and a little sharp. Come on down. If you're going to eavesdrop, you might as well join the conversation. I winced and stepped into view, trying not to look directly at anyone as I slowly walked into the shop. Shelby looked surprised, her eyebrows raised. Her mom gave me a small, understanding smile. The bride and groom? Harder to read. The woman looked curious. The guy didn't look thrilled. I wasn't, I just heard voices, I started, then gave up. Sorry. You're not in trouble, Aunt Meredith said, hands on her hips. But if you're gonna lurk around like a ghost, you're going to get swept up in the haunting. She turned back to the dress, the pink one with the lace and the beaded embroidery, and pulled it from the display hook. Without a word, she held it out in front of me, lining it up to my shoulders. She looked between the dress and me, then gave a small nod. What are you doing? I asked, voice quiet. Just checking something, she said. Then the groom, the man with the fancy shoes and the business casual attitude, scoffed. This is ridiculous, he muttered, looking at Aunt Meredith. He's a boy. Has he even worn a dress before? I felt my ears burn. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Aunt Meredith didn't miss a beat. She unzipped the back of the dress and gently held it out toward me. Dylan, she said calmly, go try it on. Dressing rooms open. I stared at the dress in her hands. My heart thudded in my chest. I wasn't sure if it was from embarrassment, or something else entirely. The dress swayed slightly in the air between us, soft pink, delicate lace, the beads catching the shop light like tiny stars. The puffed sleeves looked like they belonged to someone else's life. Someone softer. Smaller. Different. I didn't move. Everyone was looking at me now. Shelby, curious but quiet. Her mom, wide-eyed. The bride, hopeful. The groom, clearly waiting for someone to say this was all just a joke. But Aunt Meredith's eyes were steady, not pushing. Just waiting. And I didn't know what to say. Because part of me wanted to bolt. And part of me wondered what it would feel like to wear it. Not pretend. Not for a joke. Just to know. I kept staring at the dress. The air in the room felt heavier now, like even the mannequins were waiting to see what I'd do. I didn't know where to look, not at the couple, not at Shelby, not even at Aunt Meredith, whose arms were still outstretched with the pink dress hanging between us like a dare. My legs didn't move. My mouth felt dry. Then Aunt Meredith leaned in, real close, so only I could hear. And just so you know, she whispered, her voice low and casual, our rented flower girls? They get $100 cash. Easy money. I blinked. $100? Before I could even process that, she added, also means you'd get out of helping clean the barn tomorrow. So, if you say yes, tomorrow's just another relaxing day for you. My eyes flicked toward the dress again. $100. No sweeping. No hauling chairs. No cleaning bird poop off the gazebo benches or folding tablecloths under the hot sun. And all I had to do was try this on. Be a flower girl. Pretend, for a few hours. Just wear the dress, walk down the aisle, toss some petals. Like Shelby did. Like all the other kids did. It wasn't like they were asking me to change who I was. Right? Just a job. Like a costume. A costume with puffed sleeves and lace and tiny, glinting beads. I didn't say anything, but I reached out, slowly, and took the dress from her hands. My fingers curled around the fabric. It was lighter than I thought it would be. Soft. Kind of. Nice. Aunt Meredith gave a tiny, encouraging smile and tilted her head toward the dressing room. I turned without a word and walked toward it, dress in hand, my heart pounding so loud I thought they might hear it through the walls. The dressing room curtain whispered shut behind me. I stood there for a second, just staring at the soft pink dress in my hands. My heart hadn't slowed down at all, it felt like it was thumping in my throat now. The space was small, just a bench, a mirror, and a few hooks on the wall. A single light buzzed gently above, casting a warm glow on everything. I slipped off my t-shirt first, folding it and setting it on the bench. Then my shorts. The air against my skin felt suddenly cooler, not cold, just exposed. I held the dress by the shoulders, turned it around carefully, and stepped into it. The fabric slid up easily over my legs, brushing against me like water. The lace felt delicate as I eased it past my hips, and the bodice settled into place against my chest. The sleeves gently hugged my shoulders, not tight, just snug, like they belonged there. I stared at myself in the mirror. The dress was clearly made for a girl. There was no pretending otherwise. The way it curved, the way it sat, the little embroidered beads over the chest, it was soft and pretty and strange and kind of mesmerizing. I turned to the side. The zipper was still down, the back slightly open. The sash hung loose behind me like ribbon waiting to be tied around a gift. I swallowed and stepped out. Everyone looked up. Shelby's eyebrows shot up. Whoa! Her mom smiled. The bride blinked. The groom blinked harder. But Aunt Meredith just walked over calmly, like she'd known it would fit all along. Turn around, she said gently. I did. She zipped the dress up slowly, carefully, like she'd done this 100 times. The zipper slid all the way to the top without a snag. Then she grabbed the sash and tied it into a perfect bow behind me. There we go! I turned back around, and everyone was still watching. But Shelby looked excited, like something had just clicked in her head. You know, she said, stepping forward with a grin, if you really want to pull it off, we could go to a wig shop later. A wig shop? I echoed. Yeah! She said, practically bouncing. One with, like, long brown hair or pigtails or something. It'd make you look way more girly. I could teach you how to walk and pose and smile and stuff. I've got a whole system. I didn't know what to say. Was this real? Was I actually standing here, in a pink flower girl dress, while a girl offered to teach me how to be more like one? And the weirdest part of all? A tiny, quiet voice inside me whispered. What if I said yes? I stood there for a second longer, unsure what to do with my hands or my face. Everyone was still staring, though the bride looked hopeful and Shelby looked like she was already planning a whole makeover in her head. The groom crossed his arms. Well, he's the right size, he muttered, but unless he can walk, smile, and carry petals like a real flower girl by rehearsal, we're calling it off. No offense, kid, but we're not turning our wedding into a joke. The words hit harder than I expected. I looked down at the dress, the smooth fabric, the pink lace, the soft bow tied at my back, and suddenly it all felt too real. Like it was fragile. Breakable. Like I was. The bride turned sharply toward him. Jacob, she said, her voice low but firm. What? He said, throwing up his hands. You said you didn't want to break the tradition. I'm just saying, if he can't pass, we're not forcing it. She took a breath, like she was counting to 5 in her head. Then she turned to me. I think you look lovely, she said gently. And if you're willing to try, I'd be honored to have you as part of our wedding. The dress fits. That's the biggest hurdle. Everything else we can figure out. I nodded slowly, unsure what to say. Go ahead and change out of it, Aunt Meredith said quietly, giving me an out. You've done enough for one morning. Grateful, I turned and walked back into the dressing room. The curtain closed behind me, and the quiet wrapped around me like a blanket. I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Then I reached for the zipper. It took a little fumbling, but I got it halfway on my own before slipping the rest of the dress down over my shoulders. I laid it carefully on the bench, smoothing the skirt out with my palm. It looked so different off my body. Just a dress again. Just fabric and lace. But somehow, it didn't feel like just anything. I pulled my t-shirt and shorts back on in silence, glancing at the mirror once more before slipping out. I didn't recognize the expression on my face. Not quite nervous. Not quite embarrassed. Just caught. Like I'd stepped into something I didn't know how to step out of. We stepped out of the shop together, the screen door clapping shut behind us. Shelby walked ahead a little, her ponytail swaying as she kicked at a small rock in the gravel. I kept a few paces behind, not sure if I was embarrassed, overwhelmed, or just tired from holding my breath for the past half hour. You didn't look that uncomfortable, she said, glancing back over her shoulder. I shrugged. It was weird. Yeah, but like, good weird or bad weird? I didn't answer. Mostly because I wasn't sure. She slowed her pace until we were side by side, then bumped me lightly with her elbow. You didn't even freak out when they zipped it up. That's something. I stuffed my hands into my pockets. I guess. You know, she said, her voice turning more serious, if you want to actually be convincing as a flower girl, you have to stop thinking of yourself like a boy trying on a dress. I looked at her, frowning a little. What else would I think of myself as? A girl in a dress, she said simply. It's all in your head. If you think it's weird, it'll feel weird. But if you think it's normal, then it is normal. She twirled once for emphasis, the hem of her black leggings flaring slightly around her sneakers. I hadn't even noticed until now, but she wasn't in anything fancy today, just basic leggings and a faded t-shirt with a glittery heart on the front. Casual, simple. Girly, but not loud about it. You don't always wear dresses, I pointed out. Of course not, she said. Nobody wears dresses every day unless they're, like, royalty. Or really into twirling. So how am I supposed to get used to wearing them if no one else does? She grinned. Easy. We get you some cute outfits. Not all dresses. Just stuff that's, you know, girl-coded. Skirts. Leggings. Tees with sparkles. Maybe some flats or sandals with bows. I raised an eyebrow. You already have this whole plan, don't you? Oh, totally, she said with a proud little nod. I've been training flower girls since I was 6. You're just my first surprise recruit. I didn't say anything, but I found myself glancing down at my own clothes, plain swim trunks, plain shoes, plain everything. Then at hers again. The soft shapes. The little heart. The gentle confidence she carried with her. She didn't look like she was trying. She just was. Don't worry, she said, linking her arm through mine like it was no big deal. We'll go easy at first. One outfit at a time. You'll be flower girl ready by Saturday. My throat felt tight, but I nodded. And weirdly, for the first time all morning, I kind of believed her. Shelby gave my arm a light squeeze before letting go. She picked up the rock she'd been kicking earlier and tossed it off into the grass, like the conversation we'd just had wasn't one of the strangest, and maybe most important, moments of my entire life. I'm gonna ask my mom if you can come over, she said suddenly, like it had just popped into her head. Like, today. I blinked. What? To hang out. Practice. You need girl training, obviously, she added, like that was a perfectly normal thing to say. Walking in flats, holding a bouquet, smiling without looking like you're being held hostage. You know, the basics. I gave her a look. You really think I need all that? She gave me a look right back. Did you see the way you held your hands in that dress? Like you were waiting for lightning to strike. I rubbed the back of my neck. Okay. Fair. And anyway, she went on, already marching toward the parking lot, we should go to the wig shop. If you're gonna pull this off at the wedding, your hair's gonna need some serious help. I instinctively ran a hand through my own hair, short, a little messy from sleeping and changing, and about as far from flower girl material as you could get. A wig shop? I repeated. Yeah, she said. You got the body type, and now we know the dress fits. But your hair? It kind of ruins the illusion. And I know a place. Real wigs. Not costume stuff. You'd be surprised what a little length and a headband can do. I don't know. You don't have to, she said, slowing down a bit. I just think you'd look really cute with soft bangs. And, like, shoulder-length waves. Maybe a bow? I didn't answer right away. The words really cute bounced around in my head longer than I wanted to admit. You really think I can pull it off? I finally asked. She turned to face me and didn't even hesitate. I think you already did. You just haven't caught up to it yet. I stared at her, trying to think of something to say that wasn't awkward or weird or too honest. But all that came out was, okay. She grinned. Cool. I'll ask my mom. And I'll tell her it's for Flower Girl emergency training, so she has to say yes. We walked a little farther, quiet again, the gravel crunching under our feet. Part of me still wanted to run back inside and pretend none of this happened, but a different part, the one that had looked in the mirror, the one still thinking about soft lace and the way the sash felt around my waist, that part was curious. Really curious. And maybe ready for something I didn't know I'd been waiting for. As we neared the edge of the gravel lot, I looked down at my swim trunks again, plain gray, the hem brushing just below my knees, and then back at Shelby. She was still walking ahead of me, her ponytail bouncing slightly with every step. Her black leggings hugged her legs neatly, and her t-shirt, faded but bright with its glittery heart, moved with her like it belonged there. Nothing about it looked stiff or forced. She just looked comfortable. Comfortable being who she was. Comfortable in clothes that said girl without needing ruffles or bows or puffed sleeves. I didn't even know what that kind of comfort felt like. But watching her, I kind of wanted to find out. We walked back toward the shop entrance, the sun now fully up and casting warm light across the gravel. The door was propped open, and I could hear voices before we stepped inside. Aunt Meredith and Shelby's mom were standing near the counter, talking casually, probably about Flower Girl emergencies and rental logistics. Shelby didn't waste a second. Mom, she said, bouncing slightly on her heels, can Dylan come over? Her mom looked at her, blinking. Today? Yeah. For training. I need more time with her if we're gonna make this Flower Girl thing believable. Her mom raised an eyebrow. Honey, we weren't planning to come back here again today. I have errands, and your dad's off early. Then what if Dylan sleeps over? Shelby asked quickly, as wide as she was pulling out her secret weapon. That way we don't waste time going back and forth. It'll be perfect. I tensed a little. A sleepover? Shelby's mom hesitated. I don't know, sweetie. Dylan is a boy. Shelby rolled her eyes like that was the least important detail in the world. This is Flower Girl training, she said. He'll be a girl the whole time. I blinked. That was fast. Then she turned to me, smiling brightly. Right, Zoe? The name hit me like a cold splash of water. Wait, what? I asked, startled. She beamed like she'd just solved a puzzle. You can't go around being called Dylan in a dress like that. It's too not flowery. You need a Flower Girl name. Zoe? I echoed, still trying to catch up. Yeah, she said, clearly thrilled with herself. It's cute. It suits you. I looked at Aunt Meredith, half expecting her to step in, to say it was a bit much or maybe slow things down. But she just gave me a small, unreadable smile. And Shelby's mom? She looked at me for a moment, not judging, just measuring, then said, only if it's okay with Zoe. My mouth opened. Closed. I wasn't sure how I felt. I didn't hate the name. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't mine. But then again, the dress hadn't felt like mine either. Not at first. And still, I'd worn it. I swallowed hard. I guess Zoe's fine. Shelby grinned like she'd won a prize. Cool, she said. Then it's settled. Zoe's coming home with me. And somehow, just like that, the decision was made. I wasn't sure who Zoe was yet. But I was about to find out. The conversation drifted into details, pickup times, clothes, sleeping arrangements, but I barely heard any of it. My head was still spinning from the name. Zoe? It felt like a hat someone had placed on my head without asking. Not bad. Just surprising. Light. A little weird. Kind of soft. I wasn't sure if it fit. But I also wasn't sure I wanted to take it off. Before I could think too hard about it, Shelby grabbed my wrist and tugged me toward the door. Come on, Zoe, she said casually, like it had always been my name. I didn't argue. Outside, the sun was brighter, and the breeze had picked up just enough to rustle the trees around the parking lot. Shelby's mom unlocked the car with a beep, and Shelby yanked open the back door, sliding in first and patting the seat next to her like she'd already claimed me. I climbed in after her. The door shut with a heavy click. As we pulled out of the lot, I looked back once, at the barn, the racks of dresses, the window I'd watched from that morning. It already felt like a full day had passed. Maybe, in a way, it had. I sat quietly as the car turned onto the main road and we headed into town, Shelby talking excitedly beside me about outfits, makeup wipes, and whether pink or lavender lip gloss would go better with the dress. I didn't say much. But I didn't look away from the road ahead, either. Because, ready or not, I was on my way. Chapter 4: How to Be a Girl. I stared out the window as we drove into town, the trees giving way to stores and gas stations and traffic lights. Shelby was still talking, something about a bow that matched the beading on the dress, but her words felt far away, like they were floating just above my head and out the window. My brain was too full. Too loud. What was I even doing? When Aunt Meredith handed me the folded bills before we left, I thought she was joking at first. But she just smiled and said, for the essentials. Wig, tights, shoes, the works. You're doing a real job, Zoe. Can't have you showing up underdressed. That part still rang in my head. Zoe? She'd said it like it was easy. Like it already belonged to me. I folded the money carefully and tucked it into my pocket without saying much. It was more than I expected, enough for a cheap wig, a couple pairs of tights, flats in my size, and even underwear. That part I didn't ask about. She just handed me a small bag from the back of the shop and said, you'll need these, too. Trust me. I didn't look inside. I didn't want to know what it meant that I didn't want to look, or that I kind of did. Now, with Shelby beside me humming along to the radio and her mom focused on the road, all I could do was wonder what I'd just agreed to. Wigs. Girls' shoes. Tights. Underwear. And not for Halloween. Not for a dare. For a wedding. For a tradition. For something that suddenly felt way too real. I stared out the window as we drove into town, the trees giving way to stores and gas stations and traffic lights. Shelby was still talking, something about a bow that matched the beading on the dress, but her words felt far away, like they were floating just above my head and out the window. My brain was too full. Too loud. What was I even doing? When Aunt Meredith handed me the folded bills before we left, I thought she was joking at first. But she just smiled and said, for the essentials. Wig, tights, shoes, the works. You're doing a real job, Zoe. Can't have you showing up underdressed. That part still rang in my head. Zoe? She'd said it like it was easy. Like it already belonged to me. I folded the money carefully and tucked it into my pocket without saying much. It was more than I expected, enough for a cheap wig, a couple pairs of tights, flats in my size, and even underwear. That part I didn't ask about. She just handed me a small bag from the back of the shop and said, "You'll need these, too. Trust me." I didn't look inside. I didn't want to know what it meant that I didn't want to look, or that I kind of did. Now, with Shelby beside me humming along to the radio and her mom focused on the road, all I could do was wonder what I'd just agreed to. Wigs. Girls' shoes. Tights. Underwear. And not for Halloween. Not for a dare. For a wedding. For a tradition. For something that suddenly felt way too real. We pulled into a little plaza on the edge of town, one of those quiet strip malls with peeling paint and too many for lease signs. Nestled between a dry cleaner and a nail salon was a storefront with a sign that read "Here and There, Wigs, Extensions, Styles." The windows were tinted, but not too dark to hide the headless mannequins inside, all lined up with carefully styled hair in every color and cut imaginable. Shelby bounced in her seat. "We're here!" My stomach fluttered. Shelby's mom turned off the engine and looked back at me with a gentle expression. "No pressure," she said. "You don't have to do anything you're not okay with." I nodded, but my throat was tight. My fingers curled around the folded bills in my pocket like they might anchor me. Shelby was already halfway out the door before I opened mine. The shop smelled like coconut conditioner and plastic when we walked in, not bad, just unfamiliar. It was brighter than I expected, with walls lined in wig stands and glass cases full of clips, headbands, brushes, and tiny bottles of shine spray. A tall woman stood behind the counter, adjusting a honey blonde wig on a mannequin head. She looked up as the bell jingled. "Afternoon," she said with a friendly smile. "Looking for something fun today?" Shelby jumped in before I could even open my mouth. "We're helping my friend get ready to be a flower girl this weekend," she said brightly, putting a hand on my shoulder like I was a project she was proud of. "She needs a wig." The woman's eyes flicked to me for just a second, but she didn't flinch. She didn't laugh. She just nodded like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Well then," she said, stepping out from behind the counter. "Let's find you something that makes you feel pretty." I swallowed hard. Shelby led me over to the racks like she owned the place. "You need something soft," she said, already running her hands along the synthetic strands. "Brown, I think. Maybe with layers. Bangs, maybe?" I didn't answer right away. I kept glancing at the wigs, the way they hung from hooks like sleeping animals, the way they shimmered slightly under the lights. "I don't know what would look good on me," I admitted quietly. Shelby turned to me, grinning. "That's why you've got me." She held one up, light brown with soft, shoulder-length waves and gentle bangs that curled just over the forehead. "This one. Try this one first." The woman behind the counter brought over a mesh wig cap and led me to a small mirror station tucked near the back. My hands felt numb as I followed her. I sat down. I looked at myself. Then I slipped the cap over my head. Shelby helped adjust it, smoothing my hair down gently, talking softly the whole time like this was just another fun afternoon activity. The woman handed me the wig, and I held it in my lap for a second. Then, with one last deep breath, I lifted it up and placed it on my head. Shelby adjusted it carefully, tucking stray bits of the cap away, pulling it into place. "Okay," she whispered. "Now look." I lifted my eyes to the mirror. And froze. The person staring back at me wasn't a stranger. But she wasn't quite me either. She looked like someone halfway between a character in a storybook and something real. Someone named Zoe. I didn't speak. Because in that moment, with the soft waves brushing my cheeks and bangs curling over my brow, I didn't know what I wanted to say. I couldn't stop staring. The girl in the mirror blinked when I blinked. Tilted her head when I tilted mine. Her cheeks looked a little rounder under the soft waves, her eyes a little bigger with the bangs above them. The wig didn't look fake, not like a Halloween costume or a joke. It looked real, natural, like me. Or maybe not me exactly, but someone I could be. The realization hit slowly, like warm water seeping into my chest. I looked like a girl. Not just kind of. Not just maybe if you squint. No, I actually looked like a girl. A real one. A flower girl. I shifted in the chair, suddenly hyper aware of the way the light brown hair moved around my shoulders, the way it framed my face. Shelby leaned against the counter beside me, arms crossed and grinning like she'd just won a game. "Told you," she said. "It works." I nodded slowly, still looking at my reflection. "I might actually pull this off," I said under my breath, like saying it too loud would ruin it. Shelby gave a quiet, excited little clap. "That's the spirit, Zoe!" I flinched slightly at the name again. It still didn't feel like mine. Not yet. But for the first time, it didn't feel completely wrong either. The woman behind the counter smiled at me in the mirror. "You wear it well, sweetheart. You've got the face for it, soft features. Lucky." "Thanks," I mumbled, cheeks going red. Shelby nudged me. "Just wait until we get you in the full outfit. Wig, shoes, tights, everything. You're gonna be the cutest flower girl this town's ever seen." I didn't answer. But in the mirror, the girl with the soft waves and quiet eyes gave the smallest, shyest smile. And for the first time, I didn't look away. We left the wig shop with the new wig carefully boxed up in a plastic bag that Shelby insisted on carrying like it was a crown jewel. The sun had shifted in the sky while we were inside, casting long, late afternoon shadows across the parking lot. I squinted against the light, the breeze cool against my scalp now that the wig was off. We walked toward the next store, a local clothing place that Shelby swore had the softest tights ever and shoes for every kind of girl. I followed a few steps behind, the folded bill still warm in my pocket, my thoughts even warmer and more tangled. The farther we walked, the heavier everything started to feel. The tights. The flats. The idea of standing in front of another mirror and pulling on clothes that didn't just look girly, but felt girly too. Thin, smooth fabric. Delicate seams. Little bows on the toes of the shoes. I wasn't even wearing them yet, and already I could imagine it too clearly. I'd handled the wig. The dress, even. But tights? Girls' underwear? Shoes made to look dainty and small? That felt different. Closer. Like I was stepping across some invisible line, one I wasn't sure I was supposed to cross. "I can hear you thinking too loud," Shelby said, glancing over her shoulder at me with a teasing grin. I gave a half smile, but it didn't stick. This is a lot." She stopped walking and turned to face me. "I know," she said, softer now. "But you don't have to buy a whole wardrobe. You're borrowing skirts and shirts from me, remember? You've only got to get the stuff that really matters." "Yeah, but the stuff that matters is, like, the girliest stuff." "Tights aren't scary," she said. "They're just fabric. And the underwear? You need it to make the dress fit right. It's not about turning you into someone you're not." I looked down at the sidewalk. "But it kinda is, isn't it?" Shelby didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Only if you think of it like that." I sighed. "I'm just not sure what this makes me." "You're Zoe," she said matter-of-factly. "For a couple days. That's it. You're playing a part. A really pretty part. And you're doing great so far." I didn't answer, but I nodded, just enough to keep moving. She grinned and took my arm again. "Come on! You already did the hard part. Now we just need to make sure your legs aren't bare on Saturday." I laughed under my breath. "That's your priority?" "Absolutely," she said. "No flower girl of mine is walking down the aisle with bony boy knees showing. Not on my watch." We kept walking, the sound of our shoes tapping softly against the sidewalk, and somewhere inside all that teasing and uncertainty, I kept thinking about how I didn't feel like I was faking something. I felt like I was trying something. and for the first time in a long time. I didn't want to stop. The bell above the door jingled as we stepped into the next store, a bright, narrow boutique with shelves of shoes on one side and rows of folded leggings and tights on the other. The air smelled like lemon-scented cleaning spray and new fabric. It was quiet. Calm. Too calm. I hesitated just inside the doorway, suddenly hyper-aware of the fact that we weren't just shopping. We were shopping for me, for girl things. Shelby, as usual, charged ahead like she belonged here. "Okay," she said, scanning the shelves. "First we get tights. Then shoes. Then froyo if you're still emotionally stable after all that." "Funny," I muttered, but I followed her. We stopped in front of a display labeled Classic Tights, girls' sizes. They were neatly packaged in plastic sleeves, each one showing a pair of smiling legs mid-spin or seated cross-legged in a pastel dress. White, cream, blush, pale gray, every shade soft and simple. Shelby picked up a pack of ivory ones with tiny heart-shaped stitching near the ankle. "These would look so cute with the pink dress," she said, handing them to me. "And they're thicker, so you won't feel like you're wearing a spiderweb." I took them slowly, running my thumb over the plastic packaging. I could feel my heart racing again, not because I didn't want them, but because some small, scary part of me kind of did. She grabbed a second pair, plain white. "Back up, in case you trip and shred the first pair. It happens." "Cool," I said softly, like this was something I'd done 100 times. Then came the shoes. Shelby led me to the wall of flats, zeroing in on the girls section like a heat-seeking missile. "These'll work," she said, pointing to a pair of simple ballet flats, pale pink with rounded toes and tiny bows. "Try those in a 6.5. You don't want them too tight if you're wearing tights under them." I crouched down, pretending to care more about the sizing label than the fact that I was about to try on shoes from the girls' shelf. I slipped one foot in, then the other. They fit perfectly. Shelby stood back, arms crossed. "You look adorable." "I look like I'm impersonating a ballerina." "Exactly," she said. "It's perfect." I looked at the mirror on the nearby wall. My ankles looked thinner in the flats, the pink soft against my skin. Not loud. Not obvious. Just gentle. "I don't hate them," I muttered. "That's the spirit," she said, dropping both hands dramatically onto my shoulders. "You, my dear Zoe, are officially ready." I smiled, small, cautious, but real. Because even though everything still felt scary and weird and backwards, it also felt like something new. Something soft. Something I wasn't ready to name yet. But maybe Zoe was. We checked out quickly, tights, flats, and Shelby's froyo reward, all packed neatly into a single bag that she insisted on carrying again. I didn't argue. I was too distracted by the lingering feeling of those pink shoes still clinging to my feet, even though I'd taken them off. Shelby's mom met us in front of the grocery store next door, pushing a half-full cart of produce, snacks, and something wrapped in butcher paper. "Just one more lap through the aisles," she said, cheerful and casual. "Then we'll head home." I nodded, following her and Shelby through the sliding doors into the bright, too-cold world of fluorescent lighting and background pop music. The store felt weirdly normal after everything we'd just done. People walked past us with carts and coupons and kids begging for cookies. No one looked twice. But my chest felt tight anyway. With every step down the cereal aisle, the weight of the bag in Shelby's hand seemed heavier. Not literally, just symbolically. Inside were the pieces of her. Of Zoe. Flats. Tights. The wig. Things no one would expect me to own. I walked a little slower than the others. Shelby chattered with her mom about hairbrushes and makeup wipes and whether they had enough strawberry yogurt at home. I barely heard her. The farther we got from the boutique and closer to the end of the day, the more real it all felt. Like I'd crossed some line I couldn't uncross. What was I doing? I was going to put on that wig. Those tights. Those shoes. I was going to be Zoe, not just in a mirror or a dressing room, but in someone else's house. With a girl who seemed to believe in this more than I did. With a mom who hadn't said no. With a wedding waiting. My palms felt sweaty. My throat felt dry. Shelby turned to say something, probably something funny, but I just nodded, pretending I heard her. Because even though I'd agreed to all of it, even though a part of me was curious, even though I'd looked in that mirror and thought maybe, right now, I was just scared. Chapter 5 Shelby's House. Shelby's mom pulled off the main road and into a narrow gravel lot surrounded by rows of small trailers, each one set just far enough apart to feel separate, but close enough that you could hear a neighbor sneeze through the walls. The trailer court was quiet, except for the occasional barking dog and the faint thump of bass from someone's open window. Faded wind chimes jingled lazily from awnings. A pink plastic flamingo leaned crooked in someone's tiny yard. "This is us," Shelby said, unbuckling her seatbelt as their silver SUV rolled to a stop in front of a short, beige trailer with white trim. A tiny porch with 2 steps led up to the front door, and a row of potted plants lined the edge of the stairs, some blooming, some wilted. I sat there a second longer, staring through the windshield. It wasn't what I pictured. Not that I knew what I'd expected. Just, not this. It was smaller than my house. Smaller than Aunt Meredith's place, too. But it didn't feel sad. It felt lived in. Real. Like the kind of place where people laughed loudly and left their shoes in the hallway and didn't care if their dishes piled up sometimes. "Come on," Shelby said, opening the door and grabbing the bag with all my stuff in it. "You're officially crossing into girl territory." I took a breath and climbed out. The air smelled faintly like cut grass and barbecue smoke. The gravel crunched under my shoes as I followed her up the steps. Her mom unlocked the door, and we stepped inside. The trailer's living room was small but neat. A worn floral couch sat under the front window, and a small TV rested on top of an old bookshelf packed with DVDs and half-empty picture frames. The walls were covered with kid art and dollar store decorations, colorful, messy, loud. Shelby kicked her shoes off and dropped the bag onto the couch like it was just another backpack. I lingered by the door, my heart still fluttering. "Welcome to my kingdom," she said with a theatrical wave. I gave a small smile. "It's nice." "Come on," she said, tugging my sleeve. "We've got serious work to do." I followed her down the narrow hallway toward her room, my legs stiff, my thoughts spinning. This was really happening. Not in a store. Not in front of a mirror. But here. In her world. And pretty soon, I was going to have to decide if I was really ready to be part of it. Shelby pushed open the door at the end of the hallway and stepped inside. "This is my room," she said, like it was obvious. Then she added, proudly, "Welcome to the sparkly cave of secrets." I hesitated at the threshold before stepping in after her. The first thing I noticed was the color. The walls were painted a soft lavender, not bright, not overwhelming, but warm and gentle. Like the inside of a candy shell. Every corner was filled with something hers, from the shelves cluttered with nail polish and plastic tiaras to the desk covered in glitter pins, hair ties, and a framed photo of her in a flower girl dress, mid-spin. There were stuffed animals everywhere. On the dresser, on the windowsill, in a mesh hammock strung across one corner of the ceiling. Big ones, tiny ones, fluffy ones shaped like unicorns and kittens, and one suspiciously round panda with a missing eye. And along the far wall was a bunk bed. The bottom bunk was made up with a bubblegum pink comforter and purple sheets, the kind of purple that shimmered slightly when the light hit it right. The top bunk was reversed, a rich purple comforter with pale pink sheets peeking out from underneath. Both beds were lined with more stuffed animals and pillows in heart and star shapes. It was the kind of room I'd only ever seen in catalogs or cartoons. Not because it was fancy, but because it was so completely, unapologetically girly. And now, I was standing in the middle of it. Shelby tossed the bag of tights and shoes onto the bottom bunk and flopped down beside it. "You can sleep up top," she said, pointing lazily upward. "But fair warning, the ladder squeaks, and the ceiling creaks if you roll over too hard. Also, Butterbean," she pointed to the massive bunny stuffed animal perched against the wall, "has to stay on the top bunk. He's non-negotiable." I gave a small nod, still standing in place, trying to take it all in. It wasn't just a room. It was her. Shelby looked up at me and patted the mattress. "You can sit down, you know. It's not like the floor is made of lava. Yet." I sat down carefully on the edge of the bottom bunk. The blanket crinkled softly under my hand. It smelled faintly like strawberry shampoo and candy. It was warm, cozy, and completely unfamiliar. She rolled onto her side and propped herself up on one elbow. "So," she said with a grin, "are you ready to get started, Zoe?" I looked around again, at the walls, the shelves, the soft bed beneath me. Then back at her. "I think," I said slowly, "that I have no idea what I've gotten myself into." Shelby's smile widened. "Good! That means we're doing it right!" Shelby rolled off the bed with a dramatic sigh and walked over to her closet. She yanked the door open, revealing a chaotic mess of hangers, shoeboxes, folded hoodies, and about a dozen colorful dresses bunched up to one side. "Let's start with something easy," she said, flicking through the hangers. "Nothing fancy. Just something light, comfortable. Not too pink." She pulled out a pale blue dress, soft cotton, short sleeves, a gathered waist, and a little row of buttons down the front. The kind of thing you'd wear to church or a spring picnic. She held it up with a smile. "You can wear this one. It's kind of boyish, if you think about it." I looked at the dress. It wasn't frilly, not really. No lace or ribbons or flowers. But boyish? No! Not even close. It was still a dress. A blue dress is still a dress. It could be the darkest navy, covered in dinosaur patches and flame decals, and it still wouldn't be something anyone would call boyish the second it hit me. Because once I put it on, it wasn't about the color anymore. It was about the shape. The buttons. The way it opened at the collar and narrowed slightly at the waist. It was a girl's dress. And Shelby was asking me to wear it like that was normal. Like I was normal. "Don't worry," she added, misreading the look on my face. "You don't have to do tights yet. One step at a time, right? Let's just get you used to wearing a dress first." I swallowed and nodded. She walked over and placed it gently in my lap. It was soft. Light. Harmless, really. Just fabric. Just cotton. But it felt heavier than it looked. "You can change in here if you want," she offered. "I won't look. Promise." I stared at the dress in my hands, unsure if I wanted to move at all. But something inside me whispered. "You've come this far." I took a breath and stood up. "Okay," I said quietly. "Let's try." I took the dress from Shelby and walked quietly down the hall to the bathroom. The light above the mirror buzzed faintly when I flicked the switch, casting a warm, yellow glow over the little room. It smelled like coconut soap and the faintest hint of strawberry toothpaste. I locked the door behind me. Then I just stood there for a moment, holding the dress in both hands. It was so simple, a pale blue cotton thing, not frilly or loud. Shelby had called it boyish, but it still had puffed sleeves, a hem that would fall just above the knees, and a soft little sash in the back waiting to be tied. The buttons at the front were tiny, pale plastic, and the collar curved in a delicate scoop. Not boyish. Just less loudly girly. I set it carefully on the closed toilet lid and turned to my reflection. Still me. Still Dylan. I reached for the waistband of my shorts. One piece at a time, I undressed, folding my t-shirt and shorts and setting them on the counter like they were something I might return to later. Like armor I wasn't sure I was done needing. Then I opened the bag from earlier. Inside were two pairs of underwear, one plain black, one pastel pink with tiny little hearts stitched along the waistband. My stomach tightened just looking at them. I picked the black pair. Still soft. Still obviously meant for girls. But at least not pink. Baby steps, I told myself. The pink ones are for the flower girl dress. I pulled them on slowly, trying not to flinch at how different they felt, snugger, smoother, lighter somehow. They didn't have that same bulk or scratchy waistband I was used to. Everything felt more exposed, but softer. I reached for the dress. Holding it in both hands, I raised it over my head and carefully pulled it down. The fabric whispered as it slid over my shoulders, past my ribs, and settled against my hips. It fit perfectly. The sleeves puffed gently at the shoulders, not exaggerated, but noticeable. The hem fell neatly to just above my knees, swaying slightly when I shifted my weight. The back hung open, waiting to be zipped, the sash dangling loosely behind me like an unfinished ribbon on a gift. I turned toward the mirror. And froze. There I was. A boy. In a dress. No wig. No makeup. No glitter. Just me. My arms, my face, my knees, all unmistakably mine, wrapped in something soft and blue, stitched and shaped for someone else. Someone I was trying to become, or at least trying to understand. I didn't know how to feel. Not exactly embarrassed. Not exactly proud. Just caught, again, in that strange, quiet space between who I was and who I might be, if I kept walking forward. I let out a slow breath. Then I turned, unlocked the door, and stepped into the hallway. I opened the bathroom door slowly. Shelby was waiting right there, sitting cross-legged in the hallway like she'd been camped out for hours. She looked up as soon as she heard the click of the door and broke into a wide, almost triumphant grin. "There she is," she said, hopping to her feet. "Okay, turn around." I didn't say anything. Just turned. I could feel the open back of the dress shift slightly as I moved, the fabric tugging gently at my shoulders, the sash swaying loosely behind me. Shelby stepped up close and zipped it slowly, the soft zip sound surprisingly loud in the hallway. The bodice pulled snug around my torso, not tight exactly, just close. Like it had found the place it was meant to be. Then came the sash. She wrapped it around my waist with practiced ease, tugged it into a neat, symmetrical bow, and stepped back. "There," she said. "Now you're official." I turned around slowly, arms hanging awkwardly at my sides. The dress moved with me, not like regular clothes. Not stiff like jeans. Not heavy like jackets. It shifted and swayed with every little motion. When I took a step, the hem brushed against my knees in a way that sent a small shiver up my spine. Not cold, just strange. New. I smoothed my hands down the front instinctively. The fabric was soft, and I could feel the slight tension of the seams around my chest and shoulders. The sleeves puffed gently outward. I could feel the bow at my back whenever I shifted, like a quiet reminder of what I was wearing. Every movement felt lighter. Not freer, but floatier. Like my body had lost some weight and replaced it with awareness. Of space. Of touch. Of being seen. I twisted at the waist. The dress twirled with me. Not dramatically, not full-on ballerina style. But it still moved. It had shape. And that shape wasn't mine. But it was on me. And somehow, that made it mine too. I shifted my weight from foot to foot. The dress brushed and swayed, whispering against my legs. There was something so exposed about it, not revealing, just open. Like I couldn't hide behind the shape of a hoodie or the roughness of jeans. It showed every angle. Every hesitation. I looked down at myself. No wig. No makeup. No tights yet. Just me. In a dress. I thought I'd feel ridiculous. But mostly, I just felt small. Soft. Real. Shelby tilted her head. "Well? I don't know," I said honestly, my voice a little quieter than before. "It's weird. But not all bad." She nodded like that was exactly what she expected. Weird is the first step. She stepped forward and gave the bow a quick final tug. "You'll get used to it. You'll forget it's even there eventually." I wasn't so sure about that. but right now, I wasn't trying to forget it. I was just trying to understand it. Shelby clapped her hands once, like a coach at the start of practice. Okay, she said, pacing a little in front of me like we were in boot camp. Lesson 1, Posture. I raised an eyebrow. Posture? She pointed at me like I was already failing. Yes. Girls do not slouch in dresses. Especially not flower girls. You have to stand like you belong in that dress. I straightened instinctively, pulling my shoulders back and lifting my chin a little. Better, she said, circling me. Now, try walking across the room. Naturally. No stomping. No marching. I took a few steps. The dress swayed against my knees with each movement, light and persistent. Not enough to trip me, but just enough to remind me it was there. I tried to walk how I normally would, but I could already tell, the way the fabric moved around my thighs, the lightness of it, it made me more careful, more aware of each step. Shelby squinted. Not bad. But you're still walking like you're in sneakers and cargo shorts. Because I usually am. She rolled her eyes. Okay, fine. Here's the trick, pretend you're walking on a tightrope, heel to toe, not too dramatic, just balanced, controlled. I tried again, this time focusing on the way my feet touched the floor. Heel, toe. Heel, toe. The dress fluttered around me, whispering approval every time I got it right. Better, she said. Now smile. I shot her a deadpan look. For real, she said. You have to walk and smile. You can't look like someone's forcing you at one point down the aisle. I tried to smile, but it came out crooked and unsure. She sighed, then smiled herself, bright, effortless, natural. Like this. You're not selling the dress, you are the dress. Be the bow. Be the sparkle. I laughed at that, a short, unexpected laugh, and my smile loosened. There, she said. That's closer. We practiced walking a few more laps across her room, or rather, I practiced while Shelby called out gentle corrections like, no slouching. And hands soft. Not like you're holding invisible bricks. Now, she said, placing a throw pillow on the edge of the bed, lesson 2, sitting. I blinked. Sitting is a lesson? Have you ever tried sitting in a dress and not flashing the entire universe? No? She pointed to the pillow. Try. I stepped over, turned, and sat like I normally would. Shelby groaned. Nope. Disaster. Total boy sit. You just wrinkle the whole hem and I can literally see your knees like they're trying to escape. I blushed. What am I supposed to do? Sit pretty, she said. Turn a little to the side, tuck your hands in your lap, smooth the skirt down before you sit, not after. I stood up again, took a breath, and tried to copy what she said. This time, I smoothed the dress down at the sides as I sat, knees tilted slightly away, hands folded neatly in my lap. Shelby lit up. Yes! That's it! You look like you're in a movie now! I didn't feel like I was in a movie. I felt nervous. A little silly. But also proud. Like I was learning a new language and finally saying my first full sentence. Shelby flopped down next to me on the bed. You're doing really good, Zoe. I looked down at the hem of the dress, the soft blue fabric spread gently over my legs. Thanks, I said quietly. And I meant it. After the last of the paper petals had settled onto the carpet, I leaned against the wall, catching my breath. It wasn't like I'd run a race or anything, but somehow, that slow, careful walk felt harder than sprinting. Shelby flopped back onto her bed, arms stretched wide. You seriously did awesome! I've seen girls mess up worse than that at actual weddings. I gave a little shrug, trying not to let the warmth in my chest show too much. You got good training methods, obviously, she said with a grin. Then she sat up suddenly. Oh! You haven't tried the shoes yet. I blinked. The what? The flats, Zoe. You can't exactly walk down the aisle in your socks. She reached over the edge of the bed and pulled the shopping bag up from where she'd tucked it. From inside, she lifted the pair of pale pink ballet flats we'd picked out earlier. Shiny, round-toed, with little bows stitched right above the toes. They looked small, narrow, girly in a way that made my stomach flutter again. She knelt in front of me, holding them out. "Sit down, princess. Let's do this right." I hesitated, then sank onto the edge of the bed, the dress puffing slightly around my thighs as I did. Shelby placed one shoe on the floor and gently lifted my foot. Her fingers were warm and quick as she guided the flat on, sliding it over my heel and adjusting the strap with a quiet snick as it clicked into place. Then the second one. The flats hugged my feet snugly, not tight, but defined. My toes wiggled inside the thin soles, and I could feel every movement through the bottom. They were a far cry from my sneakers, lighter, quieter, more exposed. "Stand up," Shelby said. I did, slowly. The first thing I noticed was how flat they really were, no cushion, no arch, no thick rubber to hide behind. My feet felt delicate, almost dainty. The dress swayed just over the tops of the shoes, the bows peeking out with each movement. Shelby stepped back and smiled. "Now you're complete," she said softly. I looked down at myself again. The pale blue dress. The soft, shiny shoes. The still faint memory of how the flower petals had floated from my hands just minutes before. I was wearing everything. And for the first time, it all matched. Not just in color, but in purpose, in feeling. "I don't know if I can do a whole wedding like this," I said under my breath, staring at my feet. Shelby leaned forward and nudged my shoulder. "That's what practice is for. Trust me, you're way ahead of where you need to be." I nodded slowly. Because even though I wasn't sure if I believed it yet, part of me wanted to. There was a knock on the door frame, and Shelby's mom peeked in, car keys jingling in her hand. "Hey, girls," she said casually, like this was the most normal sight in the world, me in a dress, Shelby sprawled on her bed surrounded by paper petals. "You two want to grab something to eat? I was thinking pizza or maybe the diner if you're up for it." Shelby immediately lit up. "Yes! Can we get fries? I want the curly ones." Her mom smiled. "If you're ready in 10. I looked over at Shelby quickly, panic already setting in. Can I change first?" I asked, motioning toward the dress. "I mean, this isn't really for, like, public stuff." Shelby turned to me slowly with a mischievous look in her eye. "Nope," she said, popping the pea. "This is training, remember? If you can't go out in it, how are you supposed to do a whole wedding?" "But Shelby," I started, but she was already moving. She reached into the shopping bag from earlier and pulled out the wig, the soft brown one we picked together at the wig shop. The one I'd barely looked at since. She held it up like a crown. "Sit." I hesitated. "Sit," she said again, gentler this time. "I'll help you." My heart pounded, but I sat down on the edge of the bed. She carefully positioned the wig over my short hair, adjusting it with surprising care. The synthetic strands slid over my forehead and cheeks, then settled just above my shoulders. She fluffed the sides and used her fingers to part it slightly off-center. "There," Shelby said, stepping back with a proud little nod. "Look!" I turned toward the mirror. And froze. The reflection that stared back at me wasn't me. Not exactly. Not just me. It was someone who looked like me. But softer. Rounder. The wig changed everything, framing my face in gentle brown waves that brushed my cheeks and sat just above my shoulders. The blue dress, once strange and out of place, now matched the image in the mirror. The shoes, the puffed sleeves, the bow at my back, they all seemed to belong. And somehow, so did I. I didn't look like a boy trying on a costume anymore. I looked like a girl. A quiet, nervous girl. But a girl all the same. Shelby beamed at me in the reflection. "Told you it would work." I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry again. I look convincing, she said, finishing it for me. You're Zoe now. Like, actually Zoe. And don't worry, my mom won't say anything. I turned away from the mirror slowly, heart still thudding in my chest. But going out in public? She raised an eyebrow. You were fine walking around the room. This is just like that. Only with French fries. That's not the same and you know it. She gave me a sympathetic shrug and picked up a light zip-up hoodie from the back of a chair. Here. You can wear this over the dress if it makes you feel better. It hides the bow, and it'll just look like a long shirt underneath. I took it from her gratefully and slid it on. It helped. A little. Still, as I stood there in the wig and dress and flats, hoodie zipped halfway up, I couldn't shake the feeling that every step toward the front door was a step farther away from the person I used to be. But when Shelby held out her hand and smiled, I found myself taking it. Maybe just for now. Maybe just until Fry's in the safety of a booth. Maybe just as Zoe, the car door shut with a soft clunk, sealing me inside like I'd just stepped into a different reality. I sat still for a moment, buckled in, hands folded tightly in my lap. The flats of my feet didn't even touch the car mat the same way my sneakers would have. They felt light and quiet, like they didn't want to take up space. Neither did I. The wig shifted slightly on my head as I turned to glance out the window, catching my reflection faintly in the glass. Just a blur, brown hair, pale hoodie, soft blue fabric gathered around my knees. But I knew what I looked like now. Not Dylan. Zoe. My heart thumped a little harder. I was wearing a dress. In public. Not just in Shelby's room, or in the quiet safety of a hallway. Out here. In the world! With streetlights and gas stations and waitresses and people who didn't know who I was, or who I was supposed to be. It wasn't like dress up anymore. It wasn't funny or weird in a bedroom with stuffed animals and glitter pins in the corner. This was real. I reached down and smoothed the skirt of the dress across my lap out of habit. My fingertips ran over the soft cotton, brushing the hidden shape of my knees underneath. The sensation was still strange. This constant reminder that everything I was wearing moved, swished, shifted. It was all designed to be seen, to be noticed. And that's what scared me. Because what if someone looked too closely? What if they saw past the dress and the wig and the borrowed flats and knew right away that I wasn't who I looked like? I wasn't Zoe. Not really. But I was trying to be. Was that enough? Shelby was already in the front seat beside her mom, bouncing slightly with the hum of the engine, talking about curly fries and whether or not the diner still had the milkshakes with whipped cream towers. She hadn't even looked back at me since I got in, and somehow that helped. Like this wasn't a big deal to her. Like it couldn't be. I stared down at my hands, small, pale, shaking just a little, and took a deep breath. It was just dinner. Just fries. Just one night. I could do this. I had to do this. And maybe, a tiny part of me wanted to see if I could. Not just survive it. But blend in. Belong. Be Zoe. Even if it was only for an hour. Even if I still wasn't sure who she was. The bell above the door jingled softly as we stepped into the diner. It wasn't crowded, but it wasn't empty either. A few families scattered in booths. An older couple at the counter. A teenager in a hoodie scrolling on his phone near the back. And a waitress in pink sneakers and a tired smile who looked up and gave a little nod. Shelby and her mom walked in like they owned the place. I walked in like I was made of glass. Every step in the flats was careful. Quiet, my dress swayed with the motion, brushing my knees, whispering with every move like it wanted to remind me I was still wearing it. Like it wanted to remind everyone else, too. My eyes darted around the room, checking every face for a flicker of recognition. A raised eyebrow. A whisper. A smirk. Nothing. No one stared. No one laughed. No one screamed "That's a boy in a dress!" But I still felt it. Like every second stretched too long. Like my heartbeat was a drum inside my ears, keeping tempo with the soft click-click of Shelby's flats on the tile ahead of me. We slid into a booth by the window. Shelby's mom took the outside seat, Shelby slipped in after her, and I sat across from them, carefully smoothing the back of my dress beneath me before I sat, just like Shelby had shown me. I folded my hands in my lap, straightened my back, and tried to breathe. The menu sat untouched in front of me. Shelby chatted easily about milkshakes and if the curly fries were seasoned or plain. I barely heard her. My eyes kept flicking to the other tables. To the server filling waters. To the guy in the hoodie near the back. Do they know? Can they tell? I looked down at the wig hair framing my face. I tucked it behind my ear, the way Shelby had shown me in the mirror. It still didn't feel like mine, but it moved like it belonged there. And the dress? It wasn't loud. It wasn't pink or sparkly or anything a princess would wear. But it was still a dress. And I was still a boy. Wasn't I? The thought circled in my head like a trapped fly. Every little noise made me flinch inside, like someone was about to point, or laugh, or whisper to their friend. But no one did. The waitress came by, smiled at us, and asked what we wanted to drink. Her eyes passed right over me like I was just another kid. Another girl in a hoodie and a dress. "Chocolate milkshake," Shelby said with confidence. "Same," I said before I could think too hard about it. The waitress nodded and scribbled it down. "You two sisters?" she asked casually, glancing between us. My breath caught in my throat. Shelby didn't miss a beat. "Cousins," she said with a smile. And that was it. The waitress moved on, and the air around me loosened just a little. Like someone had untied a knot in my chest. Cousins. Girls. And I hadn't been questioned. Not once. I reached for the menu slowly, finally, and glanced down at it. Still nervous. Still not sure what I was doing. But for the first time since I walked in. Maybe not terrified. I was just starting to relax, just a little, when I saw him walking over. A boy. Around our age. Maybe a year older, with shaggy dark hair and a pair of worn-out sneakers that squeaked slightly with each step. He looked confident, like someone who never questioned what he wore or how he walked or who he was supposed to be. My stomach twisted instantly. He grinned when he got to the table and leaned an arm on the back of the booth like he owned it. "Hey, Shelby!" Shelby lit up. "Ethan?" She turned to me like this was totally normal and said, "Zoe, this is Ethan. He's one of the ring bearers my mom and your aunt rent out sometimes." Rent out. Just like me. Except, he didn't look nervous about it. Didn't look like someone who'd ever worn a dress. Ethan gave me a quick, polite nod. "Hey!" I blinked. Hi!" My voice was softer than usual. It had to be. I was still trying to remember how to talk without accidentally sounding like a boy in a wig and a dress. Still trying to keep my knees together and my back straight and my hands folded the way Shelby showed me. He looked at me for a second longer than I liked. Not suspicious, exactly. Just curious. Shelby, thankfully, kept the moment moving. "She's new," she said cheerfully. "My mom and Miss Meredith are training her for this weekend." "Oh, cool," Ethan said, nodding slowly. "You doing Saturday or Sunday?" I glanced at Shelby. She answered for me. "She's doing Sunday. She's the only one that can fit into their dress." Ethan laughed. "Oh, man! That one! Those people are serious about their stuff." "Tell me about it," Shelby muttered. I felt like I was watching two people talk from the bottom of a swimming pool. Their words were floating past me, clear and easy. Like this was normal for them. Just another day. And somehow, I was pretending to be a part of it. Zoe was pretending to be a part of it. Ethan glanced back toward the counter where his parents must have been waiting, then nodded at us again. "Well, good luck! Maybe I'll see you at rehearsal or something." "Totally," Shelby said. He looked at me again. "Nice to meet you, Zoe." I swallowed. You too. Then he turned and walked back to his table, his sneakers squeaking softly behind him. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. He didn't know, I whispered. Of course he didn't, Shelby said, picking up her milkshake like it was no big deal. You're doing fine. But I didn't sound like a girl. You didn't sound like a boy, either. You sounded like you. And that's all that matters. I stared down at the melting swirl of chocolate and whipped cream in front of me, trying to calm the thunder in my chest. Maybe I could do this. Maybe Zoe could work. Even with people around. Even with someone like Ethan looking right at me. The milkshake tasted better than I expected, rich, cold, and sweet in a way that made it hard to focus on anything else. I took slow sips through the straw while Shelby devoured her curly fries like she was in a contest. Her mom chatted with the waitress and ordered an extra plate for us to split. We didn't talk about dresses or wigs or Ethan again. We just talked. Shelby told a story about a wedding where the ring bearer got sick in the middle of the ceremony and had to be quietly escorted out while the flower girls kept walking like nothing happened. I laughed, actually laughed, and realized it didn't sound weird coming out of my mouth. It just sounded like me. I shifted in my seat, forgetting for a second that I was wearing a dress. The fabric slid over my legs easily. Not heavy. Not scratchy. Just part of what I had on. Part of what I was being. I looked at our reflection in the window. Two girls in a booth, sipping milkshakes, fries between them, laughter bubbling up like soda. I could still feel that nervous energy hiding somewhere under the surface, but it wasn't in charge anymore. Not tonight. For now, I was Zoe. And that didn't feel like a lie. It just felt okay. Chapter 6, Just for Tonight. By the time we got back to Shelby's trailer, the sun had dipped below the horizon and the windows were glowing warm from the inside. The air outside was cooler now, carrying the scent of grass, road dust, and someone grilling a few lots over. I followed Shelby up the small wooden steps to her door, my flats clicking gently with each step, the hem of the dress brushing my legs like it had started to belong there. Inside, the familiar lavender walls of her bedroom welcomed us like we hadn't been gone at all. She closed the door behind us, then turned with a small grin. "You did great, Zoe!" I smiled faintly, the name still catching on something inside me. But I didn't correct her. Without much ceremony, Shelby stepped behind me and gently tugged at the bow tied at my back. I felt the sash loosen, then the soft whisper of the zipper being pulled down. A second later, the back of the dress relaxed and slid slightly off my shoulders. "There," she said, stepping around to the closet and pulling out something soft and folded. "You probably don't want to sleep in that thing." She held it out to me, a pink and purple nightgown. It was made of some silky material with little stars and hearts scattered across the chest and frilly cap sleeves. I stared at it like it might bite me. Shelby tilted her head. "You don't have to, but it'll be more comfy than jeans. Promise." I didn't think we'd go this far," I admitted. "It's just a sleepover," she said with a shrug. "Besides, this one's really cute. And it's soft. You'll like it. Trust me." I took it from her hesitantly, the cool fabric slipping through my fingers like water. "Bathroom's open," she said, flopping back onto the bottom bunk. "I'll get you a hairbrush for your wig when you're done." I nodded slowly and stepped into the tiny hallway, nightgown clutched against my chest. Inside the bathroom, I shut the door and stared at myself in the mirror again. My reflection looked tired. And unsure. My wig had shifted slightly, the hair a little flat now after hours of wear. The dress hung loosely from my shoulders. I slipped it off carefully and laid it on the counter, then reached down and pulled off the flats, then the black underwear I'd chosen earlier, the less girly pair. Now, all that remained between me and total surrender was the nightgown in my hands. I unfolded it slowly, biting my lip. It was soft, just like she said. And light. I stepped into it carefully, slipping it over my head. The fabric brushed down my chest, over my stomach, and came to a stop just above my knees. It was unmistakably girly. And there I was, wearing it. I turned slowly toward the mirror. A boy in a girl's nightgown, except he didn't look as panicked as before. He looked like you might be trying. Like you might be figuring something out. I stepped out of the bathroom slowly, feeling like each footfall might shatter the moment if I wasn't careful. The nightgown rustled softly as I walked, cool air brushing my legs in ways that still felt unfamiliar. The wig sat a little uneven on my head now, the synthetic strands slightly tangled from the day. Shelby was waiting on the lower bunk, her legs crisscrossed, a pink hairbrush already in her hand. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. "You wore it?" I gave a sheepish shrug. "You were right. It's soft." "Told you," she said, patting the spot in front of her. "Come here. Let me fix your hair. It's a little wild." I hesitated just a second, then padded across the room and sat in front of her on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped slightly beneath me. She started gently, tugging the wig into place before slowly brushing through it from the ends up, just like she said you're supposed to with real hair. Each stroke was careful and rhythmic, and for the first time all day, I didn't feel like I had to brace for anything. I just sat there. "Does it hurt?" she asked softly. "No. It feels kind of nice, actually." "Told you again," she said with a grin. We stayed like that for a few quiet minutes. Her brushing, me sitting still, the sound of the soft plastic bristles passing through hair that wasn't mine, but somehow felt like it was becoming part of me anyway. When she was done, she gave the hair a final little fluff. "There! Now you're officially bedtime pretty!" I laughed under my breath. "That's a thing! It is now!" She hopped off the bed and climbed up to the top bunk, her purple comforter rustling as she settled in. I stayed where I was for a moment, looking down at my lap. The nightgown pulled around my legs, the stars and hearts glinting faintly in the light of the small lamp beside the bed. I touched one of the frilly sleeves gently. Then I stood up, slid under the pink comforter on the bottom bunk, and pulled the covers up to my chest. The sheets smelled like laundry detergent and a little bit like Shelby's perfume, soft and sweet. I turned toward the wall, one hand resting lightly over the fabric of the nightgown. I wasn't sure what I was becoming. I wasn't sure how much of this was pretend, and how much was starting to feel real. But for the first time since I'd arrived at my aunt's house, I felt calm. Like I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. Like maybe I was allowed to rest. "Good night, Zoe," Shelby's voice called down gently from the top bunk. I smiled faintly into the dark. "Good night, good night."